Hey Walker, isn't part of the attraction of buying small companies the fact that I get to use this seller financing and then the seller of the business gets to actually be the source of the loan for the business in which I'm buying? Maybe, but actually usually not. And so what I'm gonna break down in this video are the 7 reasons why I typically don't use seller financing, why I don't really like it, and a few reasons why and when to use seller financing. My name's Walker Dybel. I am the best-selling author of Buy Then Build and creator of Acquisition Lab. So first, the SBA will actually give you the money, okay, in order to do this transaction. The origin, okay, of seller financing was the fact that there was no way to actually get bank financing for these deals, okay? Then SBA started to play, but you needed all this collateral. The real gift of SBA really started in January 1st of 2016, which was part of the trigger that led me to actually publish Buy Then Build, or finish writing and publish Buy Then Build. And what happened in 2016 is they said, look, I don't need collateral. The buyer doesn't need collateral. All I need is a personal guarantee, a citizen or a green card holder of America, and then they can buy an American business and will allow this to transact for just this personal guarantee. That's all it takes, in order to get this. So the truth is a lot of people are looking for the seller for the financing, but the truth is the money is usually there with the SBA. So, just go get it and call it a day. Number 2, I don't like to owe the seller anything. I don't want to owe them money. I don't want to owe them time. I don't want to owe them anything. I want them fully paid out. And it might sound like a harsh negotiation or something like that, but it's not. I just want them to owe me. And I want to be able to extract what I want from them. And I want to be able to extract it quickly and on my timeline, and I want to get rid of them, okay? If you owe that seller money, okay, then they, to some level, have a right to show up at the office. They already have longstanding, I'll use the word loosely, intimate relationships with the employees around. And so, if you don't think that seller is going to be showing up and sort of talking to employees probably about you, then you've got another thing coming to you, because that's what happens. There's drama, there's all this stuff, right? Number 3, okay, it suggests that the deal doesn't value or it has poor documentation. And what I mean by that is that if it doesn't value, then that means that, the SBA in this case will say, look, we'll allow this business to have this much financing, but instead, we'll only give you this much, and so therefore I need this little bit from a seller financing piece because the SBA won't actually give it to me. So if a business isn't financing like that, then either A, the valuation that you're paying is either too high according to the market, or B, it has really poor documentation. If it has really poor documentation, this is a great way to leverage yourself as a buyer and see if you can get a better deal by getting the price lowered rather than going out and getting that seller financing, right? The big thing around seller financing is the banks sort of call it seller risk. If the seller isn't actually engaged or owed money, then they're gonna leave and you're gonna fail, okay? In their defense, there is some recent data that's come from the SBA that suggests that there might be an element of truth to that. I'm not here to necessarily argue that, but the truth is that if you owe me 10%, if I'm selling to you and you owe me 5 or 10% of my $1 million that I sold you the business for, okay, that's 10% would be $100,000. So you give me $900,000. And now because, the SBA loan might be, deferred by 2 years and then stretched out over a decade and all the rest of it, I don't really care. Not really. I mean, I want it, but at the end of the day, I already got paid out. So if you're going to give me $100,000 over 10 years, that's $10,000 a year. It's not nothing, but you got to understand that the lion's share is already done. So, I mean, a couple of years after that, they're even more paid off, okay? Next, number 5 is that seller financing typically still has a personal guarantee attached to it, okay? It's an unusual situation where a seller is willing to do a seller note, but they don't make the buyer sign a personal guarantee, okay? So the truth is if you have an SBA loan and then you also have this little piece of a seller note up on top of it, okay, the SBA is the one that has the senior position on that loan, okay? So this person, if you stop paying them and you're still satisfying the bank's still happy, okay? This person becomes pissed and they're behind the bank, right? So what happens is they still have a personal guarantee. They can't actually like foreclose on you or the business or anything, because the bank is still being satisfied, but instead they can kind of like whack you, not literally, figuratively, with a bat, to, kind of like make your credit an absolute disaster so that you can't like get anything, right? So all they have is a big stick to whip you with, rather than, any kind of carrot or something like that, right? And by the way, if you don't have enough money to pay them and you can only pay the bank, you're in survival mode, okay? And so this person, and so you're not able to deal with one lender, you're having to deal with sort of two, and this person is getting cut out, right? The next is lower price, okay? So the first time that I went to sell one of my companies and I talked with a broker, and he said, Walker, I valued your company. I can get you X dollars for it. And his name was Gary. Gary was gray hair, been around, been brokering deals for decades. And I really kind of learned a lot and looked up to him. But the point, it took me about 15 years to really learn to get to his level in terms of the knowledge in his head, in terms of this private capital markets. And he said to me, I can sell your business for X dollars. And I said, Gary, how about X plus whatever, Y amount? And he kind of like shook his head and he leaned in. He said, Walker, listen, I can sell your business for $1 billion, but the terms are $1 a day for 1 billion days. The truth is that whenever you have extended an amount of money over time, you have to pay more just because of the net present value of money, okay? It's not exactly supply and demand. It's more like if I give you cash at close, I'm gonna give you a smaller overall amount than if I'm paying you over time, okay? It's just economic theory, okay? And so because of that, I'm able to get a lower purchase price than if I have future deferred compensation. And because of that, assuming it's all like, in this case, an SBA loan, for example, or a commercial loan, whatever it is, I'm gonna have lower overhead going forward because my overall purchase price and my overall loan is a smaller amount, right? The other thing, and this video is gonna be very unpopular with lenders because of what I'm about to say, okay? And here's what I think. I think that the real beneficiary of a seller note, it's not the seller, okay? Maybe if they're getting an extremely high price and they're taking advantage of the buyer. But it's not you either as the buyer, really, because now you've got two people you owe money to instead of just one, right? It's the banks, okay? And, let me be, this is very unpopular, but the way that lenders make a decision on who they're gonna lend money to and if a bank is going to have enough cash to lend on it is something called debt service coverage ratio, okay? And the debt service coverage ratio is really like the net operating income divided by the debt service, right? So the principal and interest that's paid every month or every year. So it says like, okay, if I sort of consider like the net operating income from operations, can the business actually pay this debt that it owes, right? And the way that good loans typically go are they're looking for like a 1.2 to a 1.25 ratio, okay? To that end, if we just went extreme and said like you had a 2 times debt service coverage ratio, then that is universally believed to be a very strong lendable business. And let's take a look at how much this is. Like, so let's say that your net operating income is like, $100,000, okay? Well, to come up with like, 1.20 to 1.25, it's really like, 80,000 to 83,000, as your debt service, right? So that's kind of a pretty tight window. And as long as you're over this ratio, right? Meaning like if you're making 100,000 and your debt service is only 50, for example, that's that 2 number that we were talking about. That's really strong financing. If the amount of money shrinks to the amount closer to the amount that it takes to keep the business running, that's where you start to get to this sort of 1.2 to 1.25 limit. And as long as you're able to hit that, usually, and in a lot of circumstances, giving a lot of attributes that we're not going to talk about in this video, you can actually get more loans to buy new businesses, buy more equipment, whatever it might be, and other cash flowing assets, right? As long as you're hitting that debt service coverage ratio. So here's the thing that I want to draw your attention to, which is, let's just say that, I'm hitting a 1.2 debt service coverage ratio. So I'm making, 83,000 a year. Sorry, I'm paying 83,000 a year in principal and interest, and I'm making $100,000, okay? That's a 1.2 debt service coverage ratio. Well, if I'm the lender, I can say, you know what? We have a 1.25 minimum, okay? And so this number is too high. I need you to lower it. So what I might do is I might look at the capital stack and say, look, I can actually reduce this by $3,000 a month simply by cutting out the seller note, okay? And as a result, me as the bank, you know, we look like, I can't draw a Superman sign. We look like Superman, okay? Because we're able to hold our metric that has nothing to do with you, nothing to do with your deal, and really just enables the bank to increase their unit of measure, which is the debt service coverage ratio in your business, should you start to get in a little tight. And then to pull it full circle, you now owe the seller money, the seller's getting upset, you probably have a personal guarantee, they're whacking you while you're, you know, probably trying to struggle to figure out your business. And so this is not a good situation, all right? Let me tell you 5 places when you should consider using a seller note. First is when your business transaction is less than $500,000 in total, okay? Those smaller deals, you can't get bank financing more often than not. Sometimes, but it's very rare, okay? And so the seller becomes the point of the financing. 2, if you need a quick transaction, okay? So death, disability, divorce, drugs, you know, whatever the 5 Ds are. Those are situations where it's like, you know, whatever, someone died and I need to sell this business on Monday or it's going to start shrinking. I don't have 90 days to do diligence and all this other stuff. We just need to sell it, right? So in that case, by knocking out the bank, you're usually knocking out a minimum of 2 additional months, okay? 3, if you can get a seller note with no personal guarantee required, then, you know, you might have found a diamond in the rough, in which case the collateral usually becomes the business itself, okay? And in those situations, you will lose the money that you put in, which is more often than not significant, to get a deal like that. It's not like 100% seller financing with no personal guarantee. It's extremely rare. Sure, it happens. People get struck by lightning too. Seller note with no personal guarantee, sure, that's good. That's good debt, right? Number 4 is it's not SBA eligible. Okay, so either it's a foreign entity, let's just say you're in America, it could be Canadian, you know, Mexican, whatever. Too much growth, okay? Too much growth year over year because they like to see the DSCR over 2 years of tax returns. If it's growing too fast, the SBA might not be available for that business. 5th is not enough cash infusion. So if you just don't have enough money to put down in the deal, then you're sort of forced to say like, hey, I need to use seller financing for this. If that's the case, it's usually a pretty bad strategy to go out and try to buy a business if you have like no cash to infuse in it. You're really going to end up wasting a lot of people's time. Please don't waste my time with that. Like, I want you to have some skin in the game. Everyone does, okay? If you're really going to get a deal done, that's how you do it. Instead, what you might think about is if you can go for a larger deal, right? So in other words, I can get $5 million from the SBA, but if I start looking at, you know, $6, $7, $8 million transactions, it's that extra little bit where I'm putting my cash infusion down to get that 500,000, but I'm also able to stretch up and get these bigger deals, okay? And in a situation like that, with that much seller financing, you may even only have to put like, you know, 5% down on the SBA note, which is pretty amazing. There's other components with like changes in SBA and all these types of things, but I wanted to bring your attention to, I think seller financing is way oversold. Out of the 8 companies I've bought, I only had seller financing once and I didn't necessarily love it at all. And so it keeps those people around, it keeps them close, it keeps them pretty much up in your business because the cash flow of your business is what's paying them. If you're interested in buying a company in the next 3 to 24 months, check out the Acquisition Lab. We are the elite provider. We've got world-class education, a vetted community. We've got a diamond approach to group coaching where we have coaching calls almost every single day. I run the search forum every other week where we go deep in your deal, tools, resources, supplier network. We'll see you on the inside. Thanks.